What's good, peoples? And welcome to another human to human conversation here on HughXM, where today we're actually going to take a deep dive into the world of athletics. Yes, something that is very close to home with me. So, this is going to be a fun and amazing conversation. And when talking about athletics, we're not going to be talking about the X's and O's or the physical ability that comes with being an athlete. We're actually going to talk about athletic identity, athletes transitioning for life after sports, and how to leverage your personal brand as being an athlete. This conversation is going to be very fun. Um, I got the opportunity to have some friends and family on this interview with me. You'll be introduced to Dr. Catherine Wilson, as well as Billy McCullen III, and they're going to give their pieces based off of their expertise and their experience as being educators, as well as being ex-collegiate professional athletes who are now working in the corporate world. So I'm excited about this. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk and ready to get into this interview, but I just wanted to kind of lay down the foundation first. So that's enough of me. I'll catch you guys on the other side. Let's get into this awesome interview. I'll holla. Oh, shoot. And I forgot. I know. I'm back. I meant to tell you in this interview, I have attached an actual, what do you call that? An ebook branding guide called The Great Eight, specifically for athletes that want to know more about how they can not only create a brand, but leverage their brand. I give 8 steps in that Great Eight on how they can do so. So make sure y'all check out that. I'll try to have the link within that bio description. If not, email me or DM me. Y'all know how to get a hold of me if you guys want to utilize that. I couldn't leave without sharing that with you. Okay, now I'm out for sure. Okay, I'll catch y'all on the other end. Peace out. What's good, y'all?
Hey, it's good.
All right. Yes, yes. So you guys by now should be familiar with my face, and I'm talking to the audience. It's me, Jabari Smith, but I go by Coach J-Bo, and this is another episode of HughXM. And this is a fun one because I got the opportunity to bring in friends and family. Ain't it so fun when you get to have your own platform? Kind of
Absolutely.
how you want. You kind of can talk about what you want.
Exactly. How you want to talk about it.
Now I want to talk about it. And what we're going to talk about today is what us three always talk about, whether it be as a collective or just in separate individual conversations that we feel that the world needs to actually hear, specifically the world of athletics. And so before I introduce my guests, just to give, we don't have a name for the topic. Maybe it'll come up as we go, but pretty much what we're going to discuss is 3 very important positions that we have when it comes to athletes in the world. One being athletes transitioning for life after sports and them staying in the industry that they played in or just in sports versus just going outside. Another one, we're going to talk about athlete identity. And a lot of times we hear about, athletes having to kind of, I guess the word I'm looking for, disassociate themselves as far as an athlete identity, but them saying, no, let's keep that. And then the third, we're going to talk about how athletes can leverage their personal brand to be in a position to gain and garner success outside of the field or the arena of sports. So I want to dive into that. We probably going to agree on a lot of shit and disagree. So without further ado, let's get this thing going. This is HughXM, and I want to introduce my guests. So ladies first, I would like to introduce Dr. Let's get it right. Dr. Catherine Wilson. And if you could, I should have wrote a freaking bio. See, I'm a rookie, man, but I'm going to let you give your background first.
So background, who am I? I'm Dr. Catherine. Dr. Cat. I am an advocate of education, identity, and influence. So I like to take the time, the opportunity to talk to people about who they are, what they plan to be. By trade, I am an academic counselor. By passion, like I said, I'm an advocate for athletics, identity, and education. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Nice. And then next, I got my boy, Billy McCullen.
How y'all doing? Billy McClellan III. I have spent a little more than a decade in sports, and dang, J-Bo, it's been a decade removed from sports. So I've spent probably equal as much time outside of sports now and I guess we'll call this corporate for this time being, but specifically in tech. And so I feel like, as a background perspective, intersectionality between sports and professional life outside of sports. And so today I spent a great deal of my time doing a little bit of both. I'm still very active, hands-on in the sport, coaching at junior college here in Los Angeles, but also still very much involved in my day-to-day opportunities as a recruiter manager in a tech company.
The first thing I want to touch, this is deep too, is athletic identity. A lot of times, if you go and read some scholars, they position athletic identity as it being a negative thing, and how it's like, the problem why athletes have a tough time transitioning for life after sports is because they adapt this athletic identity, and it's hard for them to go into the, i.e., real world, corporate world, because they have this athletic mask on. I'll admit I was guilty of thinking the same way. And maybe I was guilty of thinking that because that was the first form of information that I was exposed to when it comes to that. But after getting cussed out by Dr. Wilson on a different perspective to look at it, I want to hear why you agree or disagree with that notion and share it with the world.
So when it comes to athletic identity, even the term student athlete, we tend to think of it as starting at 17 or the recruitable, quote unquote, recruitable age. The minute you picked up a ball and learned to color, you were a student athlete. So we put pressure on what it means later in life instead of making it just part of child development, right? So when I think of athlete identity, I always say it's in your DNA, right? It's in your development, it's in your nurturing, your nature, and in your affirmation. So it doesn't go anywhere. It just grows as you grow as part of child development. If you tend to want to be an actor, you're a theater student. And we're in education, we honor that identity of you being a theater student. Even in the curriculum, the way it's written, you will talk about the history of the theater. If you want to go into business, they will talk about law. If you want to go into music, they'll be talking about those things, but they never talk about that in terms of athletics. But those things fit into the same thing because athletics is theater, athletic is business, athletic is law. So when you talk about identity, it touches on too many different things for you to ignore it, especially now we're in the time of what we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. Athletes learn differently than your average or other student, right? I don't like to say average because that makes it think as if an athlete is sub-average or not. Like, no, we don't do that, right? So when we're looking at identity development, it's who you are, the characteristics that you kind of learn from having that association with that activity, with anything. So it's like, stop making it different, but include it. Because like I said, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we forget to add athletics in there. So that is an identity that I think is natural. It comes to us naturally. So we need to stop playing. Stop playing.
That's crazy you said that because, we do hear the term student athlete, and I'm guilty of this. Not saying I didn't appreciate or value school. No, I really didn't. I knew what I was there for, especially when I got to the collegiate level. Like, hey,
truth is true.
It's true. Like, hey, my goal was to make it all the way, to the top, which is, getting an opportunity to play on Sundays. So yeah, I understand that the contract to fulfill is, hey, I need to go to class and have a passing grade in order to be on the field. So I'm gonna do what I have to do so I can stay eligible. But like, I don't care about what's going on in class right now because that's not what I'm aiming for. Is that necessarily a negative thing?
It's not a negative thing because you weren't trained any differently, right? So anytime I'm in a classroom with an athlete, I'm telling you to bring what you love to what you learn, right? So if where you sitting in the class, make it your sweet spot, right? So if I'm a forward and in basketball and I like more on the left side, then that's where in the classroom where I need to sit. And the other thing is athletes learn at a higher pace than the non-athletic student. Why? Because timeouts are no more than a minute long. And in that timeout, you're processing what happened, what will happen, what you want to happen, and if it doesn't happen, how to transition. Okay, now go do it. But then I'm sitting in a biology class for an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah. You need to keep my mind constantly going. We talk about kinesthetic learners doing stuff with your hands. It's like, it's not even necessarily your hands. Sometimes it's your body, and it's also making your mind move. So saying that you weren't connected with things in the classroom, you weren't. We have to be honest, you weren't. And unfortunately, your teachers, professors, instructors didn't notice that about you and challenge you, because you're an athlete. You like a challenge, and you're going to prove me wrong. So it's like, okay, whatever Pythagorean theorem that we're looking at, well, how does that work? You try to think like, oh, I don't know. Well, you do know, because it's about a rule. Sports are about rules. There's opposite and positive reactions. It's physics. It's all of that. You already know it. You just don't know you know it. And that's not a knock or anything on the student. It's the teacher and the educator that's failed in that aspect.
That's deep. I really like that perspective. It's almost like the school system has wanted to create athletes to mold to the system, as opposed to molding the system to how the athlete reacts and thinks. It's like we're fitting square pegs around holes.
Mm-hmm.
I should have took your class.
I'm always available.
Okay. So I love this perspective. And just like Billy said, like, I wish somebody would have educated me on that when I was in college. Maybe I would have pretty much gained more valuable knowledge in the classroom if I would have approached it that way. But we all know that the landscape of college athletics has changed, even high school athletics, and it is starting to become more of a business. But at the end of the day, you still got to go to school, right, and go to class. So how should these athletes be approaching it? To one, to still have that mindset that you just said, but two, but not be so aggressive to where they don't flunk out or don't understand the big picture. What would you recommend on how an athlete can approach that? And Billy, I would love your insight on this, because you're actually in coaching and actually seeing this too.
Yeah, go for it, Kat. Go for it.
No, I said I defer to you.
Okay. To Kat's point, though, or even to your point, J-Bo, around, can I call you J-Bo on this podcast? I know.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's what I go by. That's the money.
Okay. We're getting real informal here. In any case, to your point, though, man, like, a lot of these kids do not, it's not that they don't take school serious, but let's be honest, it's a byproduct of the real goal, and that's okay. And so to your question directly, it's compartmentalizing what is a necessity so you can get to where you actually really want to be, and finding that sweet spot to have the fun, which is on the field. And so I try to focus a lot of my rhetoric to the players around this paradigm of, I know you don't want to take anatomy and physiology. I know you don't want to take math, whatever number this is, or English, whatever transferable credit that is. That's totally fine. However, you need to utilize the resources to do just enough to understand what is necessary to have this passing grade, and then take it a step further on, depending on your grade, that can also dictate, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but your GPA dictates how much NIL money you get. And so we can then tie this back down to monetary value of, if your end goal is to go play at the next level and to have NIL deals where you have some flexibility to do as you please, then this byproduct that you're trying to maneuver out of is what you need to maneuver into as parallel path with on the field. And we can reach the same path later. You can still get your scholarship and play ball and still fatten your pockets a bit with the NIL deal, because those two aren't mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got a controversial question.
Sometimes I get excited and I talk fast, so I have to.
No, you're good. No, I follow. But that's how the athletes work. Like, quick and responsive. I got a controversial question then about that. Is it okay for 30 plus athletes who maybe 5 to 10 years removed to still walk around and call themselves athletes?
We talk about this a lot.
I know. That's why I had to throw that out there.
It's a phenomenal question. So, yes and no. So back, maybe probably about 5 years now. Well, 5 years ago, if you asked me a question, I would have led with my athletic identity. Today, I don't necessarily lead with that I played a Division I sport. Mainly, but this is, and let me take this, and let me preface this by saying this is a me thing. This is a Billy thing. 35, my last rep that meant something was in 2010. I haven't had a play that had any actual meaning in well over 10 years. And so I personally think that's corny for me to meet somebody and say, yeah, I played D1 ball at this school. Well, where'd you play on 2010? I mean, I can't even most people won't even remember that far back. So I personally feel like that route is corny. And so I had to start making the adjustment not to lead with that. Not that isn't necessarily a part of my identity any longer, but if you don't ask enough questions to get me talking about my past, I'm not going to lead with that. I'm probably going to lead with something a little bit different. It took me a while to get to that point. But to answer your question, Jabo, I think it depends on where you are in your journey and your peace with either being removed from sports or still being in the sports realm, right? Because again, my bread and butter of how I make money has nothing to do with sports. I coach as a hobby to give the game back to the future generations, right? So that's not something that pays my bills. So I lead now with my identity on my professionalism, which is fine. And then you take it a few layers deeper, then we can have a conversation about my athletic identity. But the reason I even say that piece is because a lot of my athletic identity translates into the professional world in terms of mentality space, how I operate, right? My cognitive diversity is rooted at the foundation of athletics. And so being able to receive feedback, being able to give feedback is like water off of a jacket, as opposed to a lot of folks in the corporate setting don't have that kind of training. And you tell them something and all of a sudden they freeze up. It's like, I can't believe he just said this to me. It was like, and I have to kind of say this, and I have to apologize to people, say my intention to disrespect you or make you feel any less than is just to give you some honest feedback and let you know where I am. Because first, I'd rather know everything about a person going into a situation. If you don't like me, that's fine. We can figure out a way to coexist. But at least I know where you stand. I have plenty of coaches I didn't like, and vice versa. I'm sure I wasn't high on my DB coach list, but that's okay. We figured out a way to coexist in this space to achieve one single goal, which then ties back to athletics. So, I don't necessarily lead with this is a long-winded answer, Jabo, of me saying I don't lead with my athletic identity, but the principles in which I think and how I operate are still rooted in that foundation. I just lead with something different today.
And look, and that's fine. You didn't discard it. You didn't discount it. You didn't think it didn't matter, right? Because identities are intersectionality. There are some things that are priority in the moment, something that's not. So that's what identity is. It's malleable. It moves. It functions in the space that it needs to. And that's what it's supposed to be. And that's okay. That is absolutely okay. Like, even when you're talking about the parallel practices, what does it look like in a classroom versus what it like in the field of sport? So you got my coaches, my teachers, my homework, my practice. So if an athlete is having an issue in the classroom, I always tell them how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I go to games and I watch people on the sideline. I go, yeah, they don't bring their stuff to class, or they don't do their assignment, or they're always looking for an excuse. And I tell them that. I was like, yeah, I saw you at the game last week and you didn't even have your helmet running into the game. What you doing? So now you're telling me you don't bring your stuff to class. You're not prepared. So it's like providing that parallel practice where they can see that test is the game. The score is your grade. Like, all of that matters. So when they approach it that way, then
say that again. The test is the game.
The test is the game. The score is your grade. So it's like when you're paralleling the comparison between the classroom and sport, it's so intertwined that I don't even know how we don't see it. Like, it's just so apparent to me that I'm like, y'all didn't see that?
Do you think we confuse it because of the titles? Because what it sounds like, what both of you guys are saying, that the word athlete is not the action that you do, it's the mentality of who you are and how you approach just life in general. Am I off? Or?
It's both.
Yeah, it's both. Definitely both.
Okay.
They aren't exclusive.
If I was in the military, I served in the military, I retired. I may not tell you I'm in the military.
Oh, man, you took it from me before I could get there.
That's a great analogy.
Because this is how I was about to push back.
Right.
It's funny you said that, because like, look, when Bill was saying like, all right, he's now a decade removed. Shit, man, I'm 2 decades removed. I didn't realize, man, 2024, man, I'm 20 years from the last time I took a collegiate snap, and about 16 years from when I took a professional snap. It's crazy. But I say this to say, if we meet a vet, right, that actually really achieved and accomplished a lot, they're going to tell you right away they're a vet. And we're going to respect it that way.
They didn't even have to accomplish a lot. If they went through boot camp, got
you feel me?
I'm a veteran.
You feel me?
Boom. Like, there's nothing else.
Exactly. So why do us athletes be laughing at the old heads that still be wearing their bowl ring, thinking it's corny? And I'm like, but that's a huge accomplishment. Because, all right, I'm about to tell on this, Bill.
Go
So
for
me
it.
and Bill, we run. Well, we ain't been out in a minute, but we used to run every Sunday at the beach, right? And I didn't realize we still look like athletes until people pull you to the side and be like, "Hey, who y'all play for?" And we like, "Nah, man, we some old heads. We just stay in shape, right?" But I say this to say, because if we were still like kind of carrying on that real athlete thing, he would probably have his K-State t-shirt on. I'll probably have a T-Tech shirt on. Not saying we never do, but it's very rare that we wear, our alma mater's apparel. So, and I think subconsciously is because we're trying to like, all right, we're well versed in now these fields of profession, and we want to be known and acknowledged from that. Versus if we were to let people know that we played sports, they would probably want to pick our brain about our past and our athletic field versus what we're doing now, which is what we're doing now as a profession is pretty, I would say, pretty interesting and worth a conversation for. So it's just weird and interesting how we kind of go out into the world and display what we want to talk or brag about versus what maybe the rest of the world is interested to hear from
What
us.
positions did you guys play?
We both for DBs.
Play the same position.
Same position.
So you guys know how to change, like even in the conversations when people want to pick your brain about something, you know how to switch your intentions and make them actually talk about something else when it came to you talking about their athletics.
Crazy.
Right?
Yeah, crazy.
Because you know how to do it.
Yeah.
So even if you wore your shirt and your rings and everything, what you're basically telling people is that I'm that small percentage of a person who came from here and accomplished this. And I was able to do this. And I'm an alumni. I finished. I completed. Now, if they want to ask you about your plan, you can talk about the plan, but then you can pivot and make it go a different direction because you have that ability to do so. Like you know how. So you don't have to not wear something so the conversation doesn't come to you. You change the conversation once it gets to you.
You know what it is, Kat? Because you're right, and I can't disagree. But let me tell you, and I hope I'm not speaking for Bill, but I can speak for me. Man, I never wanted to be Al Bundy.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not dating. There might be some young people that never watched Married with Children, but just to bring you up,
I was about to go there. I was gonna go there. Like it's one of those things. It's one of those things where sports reminds you quite frequently that, or at least let me take a step back. You only as good as your last game, and so now that our last game has been so far removed, even it just goes back to that point of like, to you bringing this Al Bundy saying, man, nobody care about what you did in 2004, or nobody care what you did in 2002. It's been X amount of seasons since you last played. Heck, if we said that the players' names that were all Americans that we played against, the high school kids today, like, who's that? Like,
who's that?
A handful of these guys, which makes that conversation even more awkward.
I wasn't even born then.
Right? Exactly. It's like, wait, what? He did what? Like, yeah. So it makes that part really, really challenging. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, it's still a part of our identity. And to your point, we can pivot that whenever we damn well please.
Yeah, because you don't have to talk about that game or, that team or that player. You could talk about the experience.
Yeah.
And that's where you connect with people anyway, because everybody has an experience. Everybody wants to know. And okay, now I'm just feel like I'm just patting athletes on the back all the time. But your ability to recall is amazing. People want that. You can do it with no problem. So it's almost like, what am I fighting? What I'm good at. Like, I'm trying to make you feel comfortable with my greatness. I don't know what to do.
Because I can only imagine, like, let's say if I won like a Nobel Peace Prize 15 years ago, you're going to know that within my intro. You get where I'm coming from? But I never I played for
Grammy Award nominees have the name nominee. You ain't even win. But you are ever known as a nominee, an Oscar Award nominee. Like you was just in the name. It's just like your name was just on the roster.
You know what it also is too? It's so matter of fact to us. Like it's not even like it's not something that we like parade around because it's just so like, yeah, this is what I did. This was normal. Like we didn't achieve the ultimate goal, which is to go to the league. So D1 to us is just like, well, it's whatever. Yeah, I did that. It was cool. It was a great experience.
Right.
Correct. And then
over and above to the person who's never even accomplished that.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to double down. So something maybe, Kat, because you're a little bit more wiser than Bill and I, something that I know Bill and I struggled with early in our careers going to corporate America. I mean, I think we kind of got a hold of it now, but I would love some good advice on how we can tell these youngsters that's about to start their transition to corporate America and having that I'm not as good as you mentality. And what I mean by this is like when we were playing our sport, we were the most confident, cockiest MFers in the world, right? You couldn't tell us nothing. We get into this new world where everything was 100% intellect, that's why I love how you were saying being an athlete is 100% intellectual as well. But before you kind of get into that, I remember feeling, I'm speaking for me, being a little bit intimidated by people who were always in the books or going a certain direction. And just even seeing how they would look at an athlete like, yeah, I'll celebrate you for what you did in the past in the field, but now that you're in this world, you're food. And low key, I low key don't even respect you as a peer, because I feel like almost like you was a dumb jock. And so while you trying to catch up, I'm on you. You feel me?
Exactly how they feel. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, it's straight up. And my rude awakening is crazy story. I hope I don't go on a tangent and let you guys go. But I remember taking a job interview for this company. I ain't gonna say the job, but it was in the financial industry. And the guy who was interviewing, just like a good interviewer is supposed to do, they did their research. And it was like, okay, I heard you, I see that you played football for Texas Tech. During this time, I was at the University of Texas during this time. So I'm thinking it's going to be a good conversation. So we're going back and forth, right? About like stories and everything. And then he kind of gave me a story about how he had a bad experience with an athlete and a girl and dating. I'm like, okay, going a little bit too deep. This is a job interview, but okay, I guess we're bonded. I passed that interview, went to the next interview where I was interviewed by him and another colleague. Right? Attitude totally changed. And he brung the past up again, but I can feel his aggression. I was like, man, I really don't even like you, if that makes sense. And I'm like, I get it. I can be overthinking it, but I'm really not overthinking it, because one thing about athletes, we can read energy and we understand people in positions. Like I know that, not to mention just being an athlete, but I am where I'm from too. So reading people is how, you survive. So, but I say this to say, that was a rude awakening. And then when I started to maneuver in the corporate world, I would feel that same energy too. Like, hey, I'm going to champion you for what you did on the field, but you're not really us, if that makes sense. And I'm like, damn, is this get back? Like, you know what I mean? I would love to hear your.
That was competition. That was competition. Just like any opponent, you study them. What was your film study? Where did you go to chalk talk and figure, okay, who are the people? Who are the players? What do they do? Like everything is offense, defense, special teams, right? What did they do well? What did they need help doing? And where was the change in their company growing or falling? All you do is do the study. Like you do film on them and flip it.
That's crazy. Because it took us some time to realize, like, oh, shoot, we got an edge on them. Y'all not as tough as us.
Not as tough.
Y'all don't know how to handle rejection.
Like what Bill was saying, that rolling off your shoulder, they don't understand that. Do not understand that. And when they came to you and brought up an interpersonal relationship, meaning dating, they didn't know how. They was jealous. So that jealousy came and they said, for the rest of my life, I'm going to get back at one of them. Bro.
That's probably what it was.
This is just first down. You're not ready for me. Right? And that's how you have to approach it. It's like, really? Dog, shoelaces ain't even tied. You ready? Watch this. And that's how you have to like laugh, because they don't know true competition in the way that you do, in the intensity that you do. But you try to fit into their way of doing, right? So if you're looking at basketball, like we're a man-to-man team, y'all running zone. What, am I gonna get scared? No, I'm gonna boss up on you. Now it's like, oh well, I didn't think they was gonna be ready for that. Me neither, but I had to do it, right? The whole fake it till you make it, if that's a thing. But it's
that's a struggle, and that's a struggle too, because like I said, in corporate America, they use athletic terminology. And you kind of get caught up thinking like, okay, we're the same. And then until it gets to it, like, no, we're not the same.
Because they don't really know what it is.
Bingo. Yeah.
It's tag words, keywords. Like even when athletes are transitioning from playing to actually going into the corporate area, they use terminology like teamwork, collaboration, but what does that mean? Give me an example of that. Understanding, like Will said, taking criticism, knowing how to give feedback, how to accept it. Some people don't know that because their feelings are on their sleeves. Your feelings not on your sleeve because your whole thing was to have a common goal, and we're going to get there the best way we can. We don't have to like each other, but we're going to respect the skill set that each person brings in. And if we're going to have an issue with it, we're going to call the timeout and go in the corner and talk about it. And you're gonna fix your mind, fix your face, and we're gonna go in here and win. Y'all ready? On 3, break, right? So they don't understand that. So the way that you even come into that, you're already head and shoulders above them, but they know that you weren't prepared for this. So they try to get you. It's an opponent. That's why you're always an athlete, because you can see it coming. You can tell if you're playing a game, the type of defense somebody's gonna run, and you know the exact offense to beat it.
Got you.
You know it.
So I'm gonna say this before we segue. So it is safe to say, as a 41-year-old man, I can go out and still say I'm an athlete. I just so happen to work in this field.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bill, where you at with that?
You right-handed, you left-handed. It's who you are. It's who you are.
This is a struggle, Kat. I'm telling you,
I know.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm with you. I don't know if I 100% agree.
But I'm not saying you walk into a place going, hey, yo, I'm J-Bo and I do this, that. No, I'm who I am. And then when they start asking questions, because that's where your experiences come from.
Yeah.
But Kat, to really identify as something, you wear it on your sleeve. Of course, now we won't go in saying what we are because that's corny, but you can feel that energy. And like I said, I might be guilty of kind of toning it down, but I'm like, having that energy is what got me there. But then you get into this new realm where people fictitiously act like they're that, but that's not what they really are, because we know what,
that's the grown up. In psychology, we call that code switching.
Yeah, we do a lot of that too.
And you've always done it. You've always done it.
Yeah. Okay.
Bill is having a moment. What's wrong?
I'm struggling with it only because I feel like you really you got me with the Grammy nominee piece. Like I never thought of it from that lens, and it couldn't be more accurate. And we could lead with that, like former Division I athlete or former Division I played this sport. But the thing I go back to is I think I don't know, maybe it would be easier if I was still in the industry of sports. And so I lead with that because it's still applicable to what my role would be. But what I do now is so far from sports. My mentality isn't, but the execution is. So it's hard for me to go back to that place. But that's just speaking for myself here.
Interesting. And I'm glad you mentioned what you just said, because that's a perfect segue that I want to talk about athletes staying in their industry. What's up with that, man? Why? I mean, even for you and I, when we were done playing, we didn't get into coaching or even just working for an organization. We went to corporate America. Now you double down and went back into it. Why is that? Why we don't stick around?
Man, I think I'm gonna be a little long on this one. So
go ahead.
But I think when we were coming out, one, there weren't a lot of opportunities to monetize our sport outside of the obvious, and the obvious being coaching, or athletic training in some capacity. Like those are the two avenues when we were coming out of college, where if you want to stay in the industry, you had to be there. And let me not say they were the only avenues, but they were the obvious choices, and probably
it was like 3: front office, coaching, or training.
Right. But so today, though, with just information being at our fingertips, and you have more than one example of folks that can stay in the industry, I think it's more important now to tell these athletes to stay in the industry or the sport that you are and figure out a way where you can monetize your knowledge. Because to our earlier conversation, Jabari, about the struggle when we got in the corporate environment and feeling a little intimidated, even though we knew we had a killer mentality, because of the substance that we were learning was new to us. And so not only was it new, we wasn't passionate about it. Like it was a byproduct to make money. And that's also a double entendre of I'm not really going to give a F about this, because I'm not convinced that this is the right thing to be doing, but I also understand I got to monetize and make money. And so the one thing about staying in the industry is that these young men and women, for that matter, have a passion for the sport that they're playing. And so if they can figure out a way to monetize what they've been doing since 7, 8 years old, then that's the best place you can be. I tell my cousins all the time, right? The 1% of folks that do exactly what they love, right, are unique, and it truly is 1%. And then you have 90% of folks that hate what they do as a profession. And Jabari and I talk about this all the time. Alan Watts has this
speech.
He has
or lecture,
he has a lecture, a quick little monologue about him just saying how folks do things that they don't like doing, and they teach their offspring to do the exact same thing subconsciously, whether they even know it or not. But that's 90% of the population. And then I think there's a sweet spot of folks, maybe 5 to 10% who don't mind Mondays, but they're also not passionate about what they're doing. They just, maybe they benefits are a little bit better at their job or the amenities, and so Mondays aren't so bad. But to come full circle to the folks that stay in your industry, you get to be a part of the 1% because you're talking about a substance that you've been doing for quite some time and can talk circles around most people. Now, how you identify that is the challenge, but if you do it immediately when you're done playing, you have the greatest opportunity to figure out that lane as opposed to waiting 5, 10 years thereafter.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So we're saying to stay in the industry. What if the opportunities in the industry isn't there? It's actually outside of the industry. How do you create that sweet spot for you, knowing that you're not in the industry?
And that's what I wrestle with, because it's like, all right, well, can I create a skill set to where now I can go back and serve that industry?
Absolutely.
You get where I'm coming from? Yeah. Kind of like what I'm doing now. Like, all right, I develop a skill set that I probably wouldn't have developed if I stayed within, but now I have something that I want to offer and give back.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact it wasn't intentional. I just was self-aware enough to be like, oh, wow, this is what I'm doing naturally. But I'm like, is there a way for what I'm experiencing now not to be rare for others, if that makes sense? Because here's what we're guilty of. And I checked myself. Thank God I heard your voice, Kat, when I checked my son on this, and I was talking to my wife because we're, about athleticism. And it was like, well, what if this is not it? Well, why not? I'm not saying his goal is to make it all the way to the top, but why he can't stay in this and figure out how to be a part of it as much as he can. You know what I mean? Because the first thing when we were saying like, he's going to be an athlete and he's going to do X, Y, and Z, the counter to that was like, no, he's going to get a great education and build a career for himself. Like, damn, I'm guilty of, you know what I mean?
And I remember trying to make things one or the other. Two things could be true at the same time.
Very
and
true.
It's okay. It's okay. Like we keep trying to make one thing absolute and the other one a plan B. Like, no, like we don't have to do that. Like, even, just talking about what I do as a counselor, like all my athletes want to take Spanish as their humanities. I'm like, no, do sign language, ASL. I don't know that. Yeah, you do. You know exactly sign language. You know how to communicate non-verbally. Stick with it.
We do.
Damn.
Stay with it. Now you're going to get to the point where you're going to become ASL certified. You can possibly become an official. Now you can go do other things, and you just broaden that just for the fact that you knew how to non-verbally communicate with signals.
Which is so much of sports. I mean, picking
so much of sports.
Baseball, basketball, football, there's a ton of nonverbal communication going on.
Absolutely.
You can't give your opponent any tips, and you switch it week to week on a week-to-week basis because they film everything.
You're right. Damn, Kat, how you pick that up? That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But they hard-headed. They still don't listen to me, though. They still take Spanish.
I'm going back to your question real quick, Kat, around that, like outside the industry. I'm gonna go back to that if y'all don't mind. It could be sports adjacent, but the target market has to be sports. It's the only way that works.
Okay, give me an example.
So, like, for example, what Jabari is trying to do in terms of helping people create their brand, his target market is athlete. So he's not necessarily in the industry, but his market are the folks that service the industry. And so you can create a business model around being adjacent to sports where your immediate initial market are the athletes, particularly the ones that are getting out of college, because there's always going to be a plethora of them. Only 1% go into professional sports. So there'll be more of them that need the opportunity to transition versus not.
Right. But that's from an entrepreneurial standpoint. He created, like, now, what do we do with already established of industry? How do we do that?
That's a great question.
Everybody doesn't have the will, skill, and ability to be an entrepreneur, right? So I may have to go to Target. Like, what was that? Enterprise was really big.
That's big,
Recruiting athletes for a long time.
Yeah.
Enterprise on the surface had nothing to do with athleticism and athletics in the industry. But nowadays you have to look at so many corporate sponsorships and what they do within athletics, whether it's sponsoring a little league team, whether it's a Super Bowl title sponsor. If you look at all of the college football bowl games, it's a title sponsor that has nothing to do with the bowl game. Like, I was always wondering, like, okay, so how come Conroy's doesn't sponsor the Rose Bowl? Duh, flowers, right? But it's not, right? Capital One isn't teaching financial literacy, but they got a Capital One bowl. How? Right? And you got the person coming out there who probably ain't never been on the grass ever, but they handing out the award in a check. True. So it's like, now that it's not even looking at it from an entrepreneurial aspect, but from the existing industries that's there. How can I get into this industry and still bring what I love here and transition it to the next space? But you have to be the person who want to do that, right? Not everybody wants to get in and be a change. Sometimes they just want to get in for the check, right? But then now you're mad because you just went in there for the check. You didn't go in there for change.
Interesting. I got a question on that as well, because this is something that I grapple with as well. And this is more from a society or cultural standpoint. So with athletes, specifically, I can speak for in the African-American community. Like, if you have a kid that has some talent, right, and that wants to reach for the stars, i.e. play at the highest level, a lot of times they get deterred to pursue that or put all their eggs in one basket, like, because we know the odds aren't in their favor. It's a 1% game. I got that, right? However, I will make an argument that everything at a high level in regards to success is a 1%. I'll give you a perfect example. If my son came to me and said, I want to be a Supreme Judge, you got a better chance of playing on Sunday than becoming a Supreme Judge. Am I wrong or am I right? Just because of how many feats are filled and how long they sit.
But the Supreme, right? You have Supreme Courts in every state.
This is true. It's still slim. You can't put 1,000 of them in that seat, right? How many seats is it?
Well, I don't know how many Supreme Courts are in every state, but you can.
Okay.
Why are you telling me you can't?
Okay, so let me give you another one.
Because
the odds. That's what I'm saying. The odds of being able to
look who his daddy is. He beat the odds. Odds don't mean nothing in this house.
That's my point. So what I'm saying is, I decided if I'm already, so anyone that wants to go to the highest level in sports is already competitive and have a high expectation for themselves, right? But the community says no because the odds aren't in your favor. They don't say no, but they say hedge your bets and make sure you have a backup plan, right? But if I wanted to become a neurosurgeon, there's no, listen, I'm in academia now. The ones that are studying that ain't doing nothing else but that, if that makes sense. Because one, is competitive now, and two, it takes a lot of your time. But if my son were to say that, or someone's son, they'd be like, okay, let's support and put everything in front of you to be able to fulfill that, which we know how hard and demanding it is. I just wish sports was like that from a culture and a community standpoint, outside of maybe the single parent that's pushing that because they feel that's their only hope. That's
right.
my
could be, but again, we have to teach it, right? So you talk about eggs in one basket. You can do a lot with an egg. You can boil it, you can scramble it, you could, like, so the way that I think is never limiting, right? So you put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, cool. But it's a lot that I can do with the eggs in the basket that I got. So even with the neurosurgeon, that's their intent, to be a neurosurgeon. But if they can't, they understand the brain and how it works. So then if they never become a surgeon because they broke their arm, their hand, they can't do it anymore, they still have the knowledge to do something else. That was still their egg.
And right? It's still in the field, right? In some capacity.
So it wasn't like a total plan B and a backup plan. We said stuff like that, but it's like, it's not really. It's still part of the plan.
And that's my point.
It's part of the plan.
That's my actual point. Like, all right, I can't play this thing, but how can I still be around it in some capacity outside of coaching? Like, I don't want to coach X's and O's, but I want to be around it. You get what I'm saying?
You have to find out what your interest is, right? Because you could be a person who likes to draw. So now you're gonna create the uniforms. You're gonna redo the logo. Like FloJo was with the Indiana Pacers when they had the striped uniforms. Was it the Pacers or the Magic? I can't remember. Okay. But the basketball uniforms that had the pinstripes, like that was FloJo. Like FloJo getting to designing basketball uniforms.
The sprinter FloJo.
Yeah.
Today he was learning that.
Right. So it's like how you navigate and get to what you want. Like, even when it comes to you watching the NBA game and you hear the music that's being played. Some people are literally creating music to be played on television. That's a soundtrack. They use popular music, but some things aren't popular. The ESPN's theme. Somebody
Yeah,
wrote
Django,
that.
yeah.
They didn't have to be an athlete to do that. The graphics and things that we see. It's like, I may not be that person, but I know what graphic would look good when you're telling that story. I know what song would go best when you show that. When we look at the commentators, half of them don't know what they're talking about. Somebody wrote that. Somebody wrote that. Somebody's in the back looking at all of the stats and looking that up. And they just knew, oh, this is the first time somebody has did this since 1972 with a left shoe. No, somebody
like,
told
you didn't know that.
So if I'm a researcher, I'm a historian, and I love that, and I love sports, I'm going to study history. I'm going to study all of that, and then I'm going to bring it to what I love. Again, bringing what you love to what you learn and what you do, that's where you never work. Like, even if I don't like Mondays, I'm going to like what I'm going to do this Monday because I just thought of something else I'm going to do. Like, even in the industry of academics, I am really like pushing the envelope on curriculum because I don't see why there isn't a sports studies degree. Because every general education area, every discipline, you can find a way that sports makes sense in that.
That's crazy.
Cultural humanities, and we're looking at how things happen. You talk about sports. How did sport go from war to entertainment? How did the sport lacrosse go from worship to entertainment to competition? We went from leather helmets to sort of kind of helmets to this helmet that now can be on a crash test dummy in a car. Like, how do we do that? The gloves that you use in baseball was like this big until this big, until that big. And then you look at the official, they used to be hiding behind the little thing. Now everything they got is underneath. That's called like evolution. Like, but it's in sport. Are we talking about it? No. Like, women are going to have a flag football team. How that happen?
Like, for real. A very competitive one at that.
How it goes. So it's just so many things that you can bring into it, whether like history or math with the statistics. It's just so much. It's just so
is it the fact that maybe as a culture, like as ubiquitous sports is and intertwined with culture, you still don't want to take it serious enough to it being its own industry, no matter how many billions of dollars. Because here's why. Whenever you have an industry that's valuable and pump, you're going to pump dollars and invest in it. And that's how you do get curriculum and degrees in it, if that makes sense. Because I'm seeing it right now. Well, where I work, like new majors, I'm like, where does major come from? But it seems like they take sports serious, but they don't take it serious because like, oh, it's just a sports. But I'm like, no, you want to take it serious because it actually moves culture, similar to how music moves culture, right? Interesting.
It takes the people like us to be in those situations, conversations, to push it, because you can't push what you don't know.
This is true. And it's hard to push something when the people who invest the most in it aren't in those positions of power. As real shareholders, like, hey, I'm in it, versus I'm from the outside looking in. Yeah, I use this for profit or something like that. Right. The people that are in it, that built it, are more, I got you.
The crazy thing is everybody thinks they're an athlete. Everybody. They have esports now.
Yeah.
Everybody.
That is crazy.
Like everybody. Like, so once we get to the point of acknowledging that everybody has that in them, because competition, the lexicon, like everything that we're doing comes from sport.
It's part of the human experience. It's part of who we are. I love that. Here's another good segue then. I feel like I slid you guys a script on what's next because this is perfect. I want to get into my passion now, which is branding, and how not only these professional athletes can leverage their personal brand, but now because of NIL deals and even at the youth level, how can, and here's where I'm big, and I'm big in a big overview when it comes to this. How can these athletes now build a sustainable brand to, no matter how far they make it in sports, they'll be able to leverage that into something even more valuable?
You have to develop character first.
That's a good start.
Have to develop character. And that starts with the T-ball era.
The which era?
The T-ball area.
T-ball.
They're playing T-ball. Keep them humble
Mm-hmm.
while still encouraging them to be the best, even if they are the best. There's ways that you can improve, you know, because the person that's going to get the transition to the branding, they have to have something in them that's worth branding. So your skill is one thing, but your personality and character is what's really going to take you. So you have to have them go hand in hand as early as possible. Correct. So it's not seen as I'm doing something totally different. I'm doing something way over here. You know, it's so important to collaborate things. That nature and nurture is important.
Right.
You got to go together. I'm not one that says nature or nurture. I say and, because you have to keep the and in the situation.
A really good point. Because once the sport is over, what does the consumer then have to hang on to?
Right.
You know what I mean?
If you think of Muhammad Ali, he was great, and people hated him for saying he was great. Until later, when they realized, one, you were right.
Right.
And two, you're a good person.
Right. Because it's interesting you said that, and it's funny, we're talking about that right now, where it's the image of a person who had a solid brand in the background of Billy's image, which is Bo Jackson, and he's 30 years removed from the sport, damn near, right? But if his shoe went on sale right now, you know, people will go purchase it. So I say this to say, because not all athletes are going to have, they're going to always have a unique story, but an overly unique story that can gravitate to someone. So a perfect example, maybe somebody's dealing with bullying or something like that. That's a unique story that you can attach to a mission or a purpose. You know, some people are just average kids, and there's nothing wrong with that come from well-to-do families, you know, and it's just like, but how do I leverage that as a brand? Because your brand, like you, was that you, Kat, or Bill, that said character starting off with, like, hey, I have good character, but how do I leverage my character something more than just a regular, I just can say something I can put on my resume as a job. Like, how can I really, really leverage this and have something that I own and have, you know, ownership in, that I can kind of use? Like, that's the thing that I want to build for these young athletes. I give you a perfect example. Don't want to go on a tangent, but people know about what I built for UXM off the, you know, the 8 steps of building a personal brand. But the pillars that I built those 8 steps on, and it's funny, Kat, because you kind of mentioned it a little bit, I call it the sweet spot. So the sweet spot, work with me, is when you mix what you love and what you're good at, and you call that a passion, right? So once you create your passion, you have what you're good at, and what problem you can solve becomes your profession, right? So now that you have that, you have what problem you solve, and you bring that together. What is there underserved population for that? Now you have your market, right? So once you find your market, you blend that in to, is it profitable? So once you pretty much can clear all of those rings, you have what is people call your purpose. I call it your sweet spot, what you can do. Do you see a youth being able to, one, understand that, and two, understanding it enough to put that into now their lexicon as they navigate throughout, you know, their athletic and academic career, to be like, hey, when this thing is over, I'm good because I already have this in my back pocket, and I can pivot, me being an athlete, however I want, and use this as my advantage.
Absolutely, but you have to teach it, and you have to break it down. You have to stay in an area long enough where they understand what it means. Not just that they heard it, they got it, all right, I can move on. No, really stay in that space, understand what that means, to want to be that person, right? Because if you have a person who wants to battle food insecurities, right? Because they know what it felt like. So this is the person that's going to have food drives and canned food drives at every game. And they're going to be the ones that's taking it to pallets to different places, because they understand it, right? So they have to pick something that really means something to them, and then see it as a social problem, right? Because it's all about social responsibility when it comes to branding, right? So they have to know that not everybody's going to buy into it. So that goes back to what Billy was saying, criticism, right?
Yep.
Know that not everything that you do is going to work. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board, start over, rebrand the idea, right? Or the process. Like, you can keep your idea, but what is a way that we can really finesse this so it looks the way that I want it to look long term? Because you don't want to keep changing everything you're doing based on what's hot in the world.
Right.
Right? You know, water is cool. I don't care what you do with it. Water.
Water.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to make water better, but we're not going to try to reinvent water, because we know the ingredients for water, still haven't been able to reproduce it yet.
Correct. So it's safe to say that every athlete should find a second passion as soon as possible. Keep your number one passion, which is your sport.
Because it depends on what the passion is. Understand what it is. Like, go, so like I tell you all the time about your book. Your book is almost 22 years worth of work.
Wait,
you have 11 play. Your book is worth at least 22 years worth of work. Because
break that down.
One play, opening up, delving into it, and really going by each thing that you're saying in that one play, you can do that one play in another 5 years. Same play one. Because you've changed, society's changed, but everything that you're saying is foundational. So now you have to present it in a way to this next generation to get it. Because whether it's Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Elemental P, their mindset is different in how they can understand information. So every time there's a new generation to come out, they're not going to understand what you meant. So you would have to restate it so they can understand it. You didn't change your passion. It just looked different to the people who didn't know what it was to begin with.
Damn. Never looked at it like that. Same principles, but position. Yeah.
Whether you call it the 57th edition, whatever, you can break each play down to one whole book that's the same size of the one that's all 11. Why? Because you're learning, you're changing, you're seeing what's happening, but your foundation is still the same. You didn't change your passion. Correct. You just changed the strategy. Cover two, man.
That's why they call you Dr.
Cover two, man. Come on now. What are we doing? We still gonna backpedal, but I'm backpedal and do what? Am I taking them inside? I'm gonna keep them on post. What am I doing? Same thing. Still going backwards. Still play. Same thing. Nothing changed. That's all.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. Okay. Well, listen, man. You guys were able to share an hour and some change of your time with me. I'm so ever grateful for that, and I appreciate that. And before I let you go, if you want anyone to contact or follow up, probably you, Kathy, especially with your platform. I know, Bill, yours limited because you coach, and so you get some rules and regulations to it. But Kat, how, if someone wanted to pick your brain or just follow you, how can they contact you best?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Dr. Catherine Wilson. I'm also on Instagram, Affluence 2020, or you can contact J-Bo, and J-Bo contact me, and we can work together.
Perfect. And Bill?
Yeah, I'd say the same. On LinkedIn, you can find me under Billy McClellan. I'm happy to help anybody that wants to pursue a career in tech. I spent the last 10 years across a few different FANG companies. And just for the audience that may not know, FANG being Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. And then on Twitter, for anyone that wants to talk about football specifically and how they can get their dreams achieved, receiving a scholarship, you can find me on Twitter at DB Coach Max. That's DB Coach, traditional spelling, MAC. Shoot me a holler.
Perfect. And y'all know where to find me because I'm gonna find y'all. That's why we have this platform. Like I said, I'm Jabari K. Smith, but I go by Coach J-Bo. And this was an amazing personal HughXM segment, because a lot of times when I do the regular HughXM segment, I'm focusing solely on solopreneurs and building their brand. But I really wanted to reach out into the athletic world, because I strongly believe that the athlete can be the best solopreneur and even kind of form into an overall entrepreneur. So I wanted to be able to give them some gems from some people who are already well accomplished and have a wealth of knowledge. So I wanted to share that. So that was pretty much it. I hope I get to do this again with you guys, maybe some other topics, maybe make it a thing. We'll see based off the feedback that we get. But in the meantime, guys, like I said, thanks for visiting and sharing, and for the audience, thank you for lending me your attention. If you do like this, my strongest recommendation is to actually not only like and subscribe, that's just routine, but actually share this. Share this with anyone up to 5 to 10 people. That is the best way that you can actually repay me. If you think this is valuable, then that means you know about 10 other people who can also believe that this is valuable as well. But in the meantime, you know how I get down. Stay positive, stay productive, and stay in the present. But most importantly, as I show on the t-shirt, know thyself, brand thyself. And we got ourselves another one, and that's HughXM. And I'll holla.